Hello and welcome to the Advanced Age Role-Playing Gamers podcast. My name is Nathan and I'm your host for tonight, and I am flying solo. It is weird and scary and I am not sure if I'd like it. But I have a new friend here with me, Brian Colin. Say hi, Brian.
Hello, everyone.
Brian has this product called VAST GRIMM, which is using the MÖRK Borg IP, which is pretty cool. And maybe we'll talk about some licensing stuff later. It might have been in the news. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody's been talking about something about that.
I heard something. I don't know. But so Brian, why don't you start us off with telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got here, your history with gaming. Just give us the 50,000 foot view.
Wow. Okay. Yes, sure. And feel free to jump in at any point, because sometimes, I'll go on some strange tangent. But my name's Brian Colin. I am the VP of RPG development at Infinite Black, who publishes VAST GRIMM. I got my start in gaming a long time ago in fourth grade. I was sometime in the early 80s because my friends and I were lighting things on fire, and their older sister came outside, saw us doing that, got really upset with us, and took away the matches and gave us the red box of D&D. And so long jump way into the future, played a lot of games, all growing up from D&D to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Rifts to a bunch of Palladium games, and eventually landed with Fate for a long time and really enjoyed that. But then somewhere around 2016, ooh, yes, very nice.
I just held up a Palladium Fantasy black cover beat up what I got in high school back in the 80s. So,
well, very well worn and well used, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I started doing conventions locally. I'm down in Georgia now, like doing Dragon Con and some other shows. And I was doing some strange, weird, like fantasy sculpture stuff, making weird life-size monster taxidermy. And then in 2016, I got into the Gen Con art show. And then all of a sudden, things started to fall into place in my brain, like the idea of taking my weird art that I was already using some of that in my RPG games that I was running, and being like, well, I could build out a world around my things because I'm already writing lore and stuff about them, and starting to move further and further into the RPG space by starting to make my own content around the things I was already making art for. And then jump ahead to what was that? November of 2020, I think. Mm-hmm. My friend Ross, the co-creator of VAST GRIMM, ran a MÖRK board game for me and my Atlanta friends. And I think 2020, maybe. Yeah, that sounds about right. And we played that, and all my sculptures at that point had all been weird, like fantasy monsters and lots of bright colors and a little more whimsical. And I sculpted this big thing called a warhound, and it was just black and white grays and with a little bit of blues to it and lots of big fangs and nastiness. And I was like, after I did it, I was like, okay, this is going to be for something like MÖRK Borg, but I want to do something sci-fi because I'm tired of playing fantasy stuff. So I called up my friend Ross around the game. I'm like, hey, I'm going to make a game. Do you want to join me and be a part of this? And he was like, sure. And we're both graphic designers by trade. Like, he still does graphic design full time, and I'd been doing graphic design since like 97 when I got out of the 2-year art school that I went to. And then so I've been doing that professionally anyway. So the two of us together started writing it, and then in January I got hired on by Infinite Black because I'd been friends with David, the owner, after we met at that same Gen Con that I talked about a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. We were both in the artist area, and he had launched a Kickstarter shortly after that for the first Elder Dice campaign, which are like Lovecraftian themed dice. Oh, okay. And that just kept growing and growing. And I'd been doing some graphic design work for David on the side as he had overflow work, and we had been friends, and we'd gone to different art shows and stuff like that together. And he was like, well, it was time that he needed to expand and bring me into the company. And I had been self-employed for almost a decade at that point anyway. And I was slowly easing out of doing graphic design for like senior living facilities and restaurants. And I was trying to do more and more gaming stuff as I was growing my own gaming company, Creature Curation, where I make plushies and squeezes and all sorts of RPG stuff. So I was trying to get out of doing regular graphic design anyway. And when he brought me in, I was like, hey, we're working on this sci-fi horror game, and it seems like it would fit with the Infinite Black fans. Do you want to publish this? And so sure enough, after I ran a MÖRK board game for him and the other folks there, he was sold on it. And then instead of something that could have taken 2 years for me to make, it fast-tracked the whole process, because then, along with doing normal work stuff on the clock, I was also building out VAST GRIMM at a much faster pace.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, and I'll drop links for, is it Creature Creation? Creature
Curation is a weird word that I made up.
Yeah. So it has your Warhound, and I really like the Astro Zombies. So some pretty cool stuff, and maybe I'll drop some pictures in the video. But yeah, I like the whole aesthetic. And when I first saw, MÖRK Borg, it was really the design that said, okay, at that point, I was like, I didn't really care what the rules were. I saw it. I want to play this game. And I've seen that follows with some of the other products that they've come out with, like Death in Space, also, different design aesthetic, but still very, very compelling. Cyborg, is pure Johan. and I saw yours, and yours is still different aesthetic, but you can see the kind of the common thread where the design, the visual design of the game is really compelling, and it tells it really gets you halfway there to telling the story. So I think that's I think it's pretty interesting to see all these kind of graphic designers like yourself really evolving from the visual side into telling your stories in a more literal way. So I think that's pretty cool. So let's talk about what VAST GRIMM is, as far as the universe, the world, the people that are in it. What kind of games, adventures, heroic or not, are people going to have with us?
Sure, absolutely. And if you're familiar with MÖRK Borg, it has a very similar feel and tone to it, because like when creating it, we wanted to have it capture that essence, but have it be more in a dying universe versus a dying world. The overall concept is that, like, 663 years ago, there were the Six. They were these religious zealots that all had a magical tribute. And when they went to this ancient mausoleum, the mausoleum of they combined this magic together, and the doors opened. And when the doors opened, this gust of wind came out, and each one of them became infected with a parasite. They didn't realize it at the time, but then as they traveled around the universe, that parasite grew inside of them. Each of them, the parasite was different, and it evolved into what is now known as the worms. There's 6 different worms in the book, and those worms then infect other people. And over this 663 years, now there's very little left of humanity, because either the worms grow and take over the body and turn people into what's known as the Grimm, where their eyes turn into a bright bioluminescent blue with like rays of pink crackling out their face and their skin, with a kind of like hive mind type mentality, and they want to consume the universe, or the worms they're done with that husk of a body, and they just grow and get bigger, bursting out of it, and keep consuming and get as big as like planet eating worms flying around in space. So wow. It's a little more science fantasy than it is science fiction. And I when I run games, I tend to lean more into like the weird, goofier, like Slither type sci-fi movie versus like hard science or hard horror for me.
Body horror and
right, really gross, and kind of, for me, it's a little more playful and goofy, but you can run it however you want to. But so people are playing folks that are at the end of this universe is dying. There's prophecies that are in the book, much like Mork Borg, where at the beginning of each day you roll to see if one comes true. And if 7 occur, then the universe has been consumed by the Grimm and by they, and everything's come to an end. There's no, humanity's over. So, people are banding together to try and survive, maybe try and fight back. And then there's also these fabled, there's rumors that these engineers are building a gate of infinite stars, which is a way to get out of this universe and to somewhere else. So some adventures may be centered around that, trying to get the pieces to try and guarantee yourself aboard a ship that travels through this to go and escape the demise of this universe.
So that's actually, I would say that's something different than some of the other MÖRK Borg-compatible, because there isn't really hope in MÖRK Borg or Cyborg. There's really no chance. It's going to end. That's it, and you're done. But having like a sliver of hope, some people might like that and latch on to that and build a whole entire story. And if I could think of it right now, but there's a quote about hope being like a bad thing. I can't. It's an author who. Anyway, it'll come to me later. But so yeah, hope can be dangerous.
Yes,
hope can make you take more different types of risks. If you don't have hope, then yeah, I guess it affects different people different ways. But you can be less cautious. It can make you be more cautious.
So far, I've found most people aren't cautious at all when they play, especially when using like our online character generator and seeing the type of just everybody has horrible quirks and are just weird, strange, terrible people in some form or fashion. So everybody so far that I've played with, usually, except for their legion or their group of people that they're with, they just don't care. And they're just like trying to survive and do whatever it takes. And it doesn't matter who else goes down in the process.
Yeah, so that's great that you have an online character generator. So is it completely random, or do they pick certain archetypes, or?
It's completely random. Okay. It's a very similar to the Scumburther, where it's just click and obliterate, and a new one pops up.
Online character generator is a great idea. I think for folks that just want to get started and get playing and just figure out the game, I think that kind of thing enables just gets you right in and started. What if you just get together on a whim on a Friday night and say, hey, why don't we just like do this random game, and that helps. Those kinds of tools I think are pretty valuable. Do you have any other kind of online tools, or are you looking at any other online tools?
We have some that are stretch goals in the upcoming Kickstarter to kind of coincide with the books that are coming out. Because one of the books is starships, starship creation, combat rules, that sort of thing. So I have a starship generator that's going to be one of the stretch goals. It'll work the same way. Click a button. And I mean, it'll be extremely helpful for GMs that like you come across this derelict spaceship and boom, here it is. And here's all the information about what's on it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I've used a lot of like random dungeon generators and stuff like that in the past, and it's also a good starting off point. Maybe you just need some inspiration, so you start with the randomly generated item, then you build off of that. And you could a random derelict, you could build a whole storyline around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And that's how I like running games. I love random tables for inspiration for story adventure ideas and just seeing where the players take things.
So that's a big part of the whole MÖRK Borg and that whole side of the world. What I've noticed from that whole community, it seems it's really grown up, and a lot of people are creating content, and they're basically just creating content. A lot of times it's just for each other, which is awesome. It's really it's how have you found working with the community?
So I think the community is amazing. I am terrible about being a part of the community. Like I'm old. I've got 2 kids. I like cram so much like time creating in. I'm not good at being on the MÖRK Borg Discord. I'm not good at actually I'm terrible at interacting with people like online and actually feel like there's natural conversation. I love video and actually getting to see people, but when I sit down to start typing to somebody on the internet, I'm just bad at it. So I'm not good. I see it, and the community's awesome, and they really support each other. Like I put together a panel at Gen Con last year for third party creating third party content for MÖRK Borg, and all the people that came and sat on the panel and that were a part of the panel were amazing, and we had great insight to share with the crowd and everybody. That for me, that's like, I love that sort of interaction. I'm bad about it. Community on the internet, it's just, I'm not good. Like, the only Discord I'm really ever in is the Infinite Black one, because I'm there. It's work. I'm checking on things during work time, but I'm not good at doing it otherwise. But the community is amazing, and they support each other like wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I understand that. It's not everybody's thing, especially, I'm on Twitter a lot, and I've kind of dabbled in some of the other things, and they each have their own kind of pitfalls and things you kind of have to understand, and their own clicks and things like that, which can be kind of pretty daunting. So I totally get being kind of a little cut off from that part of it. It's definitely a lot easier to talk face to face. So this panel at Gen Con, when you're talking with these other third party creators, do you have any tips that you've gleaned from that you could share with people that are watching this, that might be looking at other licenses now?
Sure. Well, so I guess it really depends on the license you're looking for and what you want to create. Like, if you're inspired by a game and there is an open license with it, completely be a part of it and get involved with that community, because like the people that were there were willing to answer any questions for anybody in the audience, give advice, talk through, even just as from basic things to layout, to dealing with manufacturers, to dealing with finding people to help distribute things, to using itch versus drive-through RPG, or using both, and all the different parts that are part of running a business, the business side, that aren't necessarily the part of, hey, I want to make a cool adventure, right? That a lot of people, that's how they start out. They want to just create something that's fun that they want other people to play. And there's a lot more to it, and people that have gone through those steps already are, if they're part of the community, are usually very willing to help out. And then things like Bog Folk emerge, which is like a co-op of people that were, a lot of the people that were on that panel are now started that, and they have a Kickstarter now for Lechoma, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's the first thing that they've started. So like,
okay,
the community comes together and they're working to help each other out. But as far as advice for people on licenses and things like that, definitely find one that you are passionate about, and find the one that fits what you want to do, and try and find one that isn't going to swallow your soul.
So I mean, we're here, we're talking, we might as well touch on this whole OGL debacle. Do you have a spicy take on this, or not so spicy? Do you have a mild, just jalapeno flavored?
I mean, I grew up playing D&D. Yeah. I love D&D as a whole, as a concept. I don't enjoy playing it now or running it, because I like things that I have to think about less. So that's why VAST GRIMM is not anything like that. I want to be able to do the rules and things like that. But as far as like the OGL thing, I think it's a terrible move on Wizards' part to even not respond at this point. I think
it's been a while.
The little bit in there about being able to reproduce or use the content that's been created, basically royalty free. Like, say I make a whole setting and all that, and they can take that and use it however they want. I think that's the part that bothers me the most. Like, if it's a company and you're using their, even if they're going back and changing what they said 20 years ago, but you're using their basic core stuff to make money off of, and they want to cut, they're a giant corporation. Of course they want to cut. Yeah. But taking your unique individual IP or whatever that you create from that, I don't think that should be allowed at all. I think that's the the most egregious thing to me. And there's plenty of other systems out there that you can work with if you want to.
Yeah, I think it's the hard part for a lot of people too. Is they've really put sometimes years of blood, sweat, and tears into D&D, and this feeling of just them coming in and possibly that they haven't really released anything official yet, right. Possibly maybe pulling the whole rug out from under them. So they're kind of they're sitting there in stasis right now, like kind of wondering, all this stuff. Maybe they're not making a ton of money on it, or maybe they're paying some of their bills, or it's just funding their passion. But that's all still valid.
Yeah.
And I'm like you. I started playing in the 80s in D&D, and I still have a lot of D&D books, and I like playing D&D with my friends. If I was going to go out, I do have a smaller group. I call them friends now too, but they're people like 20 years younger than I am, and we play all kinds of different things. And that's the group I really get to get out of my comfort zone and try some different things. And that's like, to me, one of the best things about this hobby is trying different things. So I could see people who are really interested in this continuing to make their livelihood, or at least or have the dream of making their livelihood out of D&D. I can see how they're upset, but I'm preaching a bit right now, but anytime someone in the tabletop community does something awful, I do this subtweet where I post this Sonic Youth song called "Kill Your Heroes." Maybe it's kind of a shitty take on my part, but that's kind of how I feel. It's like if you always put all your energy into like one, these big groups, these big personalities, these big companies, I mean, you're gonna get disappointed at some point. It's gonna happen. Maybe I'm a nihilist, but
well, you can't control things that aren't you.
Yeah.
Right, and aren't things that you don't have ownership of.
Yeah. So it's sad. And I hope they walk it back, and I hope people can continue to do what they love. But I hope this really does make some people look around, because I've got 4 bookshelves of games over there that aren't D&D, and I wish I had the time to get them to the table, especially if you're a lot younger than me, like most of the people that we talk to are. Right. You've got all the time in the world to try some other games, to try like 20 games, try 30 games, try little independent games, try stuff from Free League, or Cobalt Press. There's so much good stuff out there, and you can take that, what you learn, and take that back to your comfort zone, your D&D or whatever, and be a better, a more well-rounded gamer. So
yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things with this, though, I don't think players as a whole are going to be shaken by this at all, because it's not going to affect them in any way. And I think as a company, Hasbro is not going to lose their base. They're still there. So I don't think it's going to affect them. So I think the decisions that creators and publishers make, it's all going to just have to be their, like, what is comfortable for them, and everybody's take's going to be different.
Yeah, that's true. We live in interesting times. So.
Yep. Luckily, the MÖRK Borg license doesn't have any of that stuff. It's just like, don't write anything hateful or harmful, and don't be a jerk to anybody, and you're pretty much set.
I think that's that last part's pretty hard sometimes, not being a jerk, but the rest of that's pretty easy to do. I think is don't be hateful.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's I always bring that when I talked to Johan a couple times, and the guys from Christian, and the guys from Death in Space, and and we talk about that, and it's just great. And it's given folks like you and I bought a product from Astrolich,
Nice.
and
Yep.
a bunch more that they're able to kind of show what they can do and be creative and not have to worry about that side of things. So that's pretty awesome what they're doing, and they deserve all the notoriety and success that they get from this. So
Absolutely, and they're all super nice guys.
yeah,
Like because a handful of them made it out to Gen Con, and they were very very gracious and awesome folks to be around.
Yeah, I hope I get a chance to see them at some point. I definitely owe them a beer or two. So you went to Gen Con. You also went to the PAX Unplugged. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it this year. How was PAX Unplugged for you?
PAX Unplugged was great. I was all the way back in like the farthest corner of the convention. I was next to the Philly Flyers, but everything like the people that were there were amazing. It was the very first show that I had VAST GRIMM product at. Like we had it at Gen Con, but it was only like display copies and taking pre-orders. This was one like I was actually selling stuff, so it was awesome. And I had been at PAX Unplugged years and years back when I was helping out at a friend's booth, but I hadn't actually had a booth at one until this year, and it was great. It was a really good show. I hope I get to do it again in 2024. Everybody was just really awesome, and I made a lot of good connections there, which is always great. Just getting to chat with people, and while being that close to like so many dim sum restaurants afterwards was fantastic.
Yeah, that kind of food court type building next to the convention center it's got some amazing food in it. Oh boy! But before we get to a Kickstarter, are there any other conventions you're getting to in the new year?
Let's see. 2024. I've got the first one that I'll be doing is Gamma. Are you familiar with that? It's not a consumer facing trade convention. It's more of a trade show.
I think I have heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Stores and distributors and stuff like that go. And so it's learning for store owners. And so it's more to try and get our books into more stores as opposed to just direct sales. So there's that. I have Origins that I'm going to be doing. I'm hoping to do Gamehole Con, Gen Con, and then PAX Unplugged again. I think that will be my circuit for 2024.
That's a pretty full year. Conventions can take a lot out of you.
Yes, they can.
Exciting. So I heard you're doing another Kickstarter.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What's going to be? So you've got. Actually, let me roll that back a second. So you've got right now you have, as far as what you've published, you've got a core rule book, you've got a GM screen, and what else do you have?
We also have the first issue of Volatile Verse, which is an anthology zine that has 32 pages of adventures with guest authors, and all those were adventures that were part of the first crowdfunding campaign. They were stretch goals as PDFs, and then we printed that. So we do have number 2 is ready to go to print, and number 3, Astrolich, you mentioned, his is the last adventure that I need to lay out for issue number 3. So those will be coming this year as well.
That's awesome. Any timelines on that kind of thing?
Yes. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's going to be every other month. I think starting in May, we have another secret project that's going to be a really small run that'll be every other month that'll come out. So it's just going to be a small product that's VAST GRIMM related with a little mini adventure with it. Probably, I think that's April that's going to launch.
That's cool. So somehow if Matt was here, he would tell you that I have an addiction to Kickstarter. Somehow I missed yours.
It was on GameFound, and that's why you missed it.
Oh, okay.
We were the first RPG to be on GameFound, but this one you won't miss because it's on Kickstarter.
Okay. Well, I'll have my eye out anyway. So, what are you funding in this Kickstarter? What's the big push?
So the big push are 3 expansion books. Each of them is 48 pages. One is Space Cruisers, which is a ship, how to build a ship, basically like character generation. It's got combat mechanics, fueling mechanics. It's got 3 additional locations in there, like a kind of like gas and sip type places, and like a wrecker place, and like things to just add flavor to your game, and places to add other spots. One is Space Raiders, which is essentially like our space pirates. It's additional classes, factions, determining which areas of this universe different factions control, and then it has a hex crawl adventure in the back of it.
Oh, neat.
And then the third book is called Blood Altered. The Mausoleum of They that I talked about earlier when I was talking about like the history of the setting. It's a series of adventures set on the planet that's on, with some additional classes, some creatures, and just a bunch of 2 main adventures and 2 other interconnecting adventures with it.
My particular interest is something that I find is really hard to do well, and that's the vehicle combat.
Yes,
and that's actually the book I bought from Asselich is a vehicle combat book for Cyborg. But what's your take on vehicle combat for VAST GRIMM?
So I wanted to keep it in the same vein of the game, right? Everything's very simple. It's not overly complex. There's lots of sci-fi games out there that it's very, very, it takes a long time. So you have new stats for your ships, which kind of mirror the stats that a character has.
Okay.
The stats have a power core and certain abilities and capabilities that, as you randomly roll it or as you generate it, it has a very similar flavor as to the characters. Like ships are going to be, they're old, they're nasty, there's all sorts of weird things with them, but they have each, depending on the type ship class, they have a certain number of mod slots which you can go and upgrade to or whatever it has with it. And so one person pilots the ship, and then depending on what your ship has, the other players can do the different capabilities of the ship. Depending on your speed, it's how many hexes you can move. Depending on your maneuver, how many you can turn, how many directions you can turn. And if you don't have a high enough maneuver, you can spend a speed point instead to turn. So it's very simple. It's fast, and it's supposed to just be add to the flavor of it as well.
Yeah, and those are the 2 things that I find are the most trouble is basically giving enough activities for everyone at the table to have something to do and feel like they're having an effect on the scenario,
right?
And then adding in the turns. Are there like facing for weapons too, or is it all 360?
So there's 180 railguns, there's 360 railguns, there's lasers. So they all have slightly different things. Okay. But so far, I mean, all the VAST GRIMM rules are pretty loose. So it's really kind of up to the GM and the players to decide, like, well, this gun's here on the ship, so it should be able to shoot here. It's try and leave it interpretive.
It's definitely you could go too far down the rabbit hole of making it very, very tactical, and that's kind of where sometimes vehicle combat can get bogged down a bit. As if it goes, I mean, some people really enjoy that, but that's really to me that's like a different game. Like okay, we're going to stop role playing now, and now we're going to do this other game.
Exactly.
So I like games where you still feel like you're your character, and so if there's any time for adding things, definitely make a boarding process for like because I think that's you should
that can be an action like if you're up against a ship. That's one possible action, and there's multiple actions that aren't just things that are ship specific, but that are part of the combat thing. I agree.
Because some people, especially people like my wife, just want to hit things with an axe. So they want to get off the ship and go murder. So
totally.
So that's the selling point there. Thank you.
Oh, and if once it comes out, we have a very similar third-party license to MÖRK Borg. So if anybody wants to make super complex rules, they can add on top of what we've got and do what they want with it,
Okay. Oh, beautiful. Okay. So when is the Kickstarter going live? Do you have a date set for that?
Yes. The Kickstarter goes live on January 24th. So we're coming up, well, I don't know when this will air, but January 24th. If you back it in the first 48 hours, you get, I forgot to mention, there's also a mission patch program. And if you back it in the first 48 hours, you get an exclusive Kickstarter VAST GRIMM patch, which I can't see it now down in my thing, but we have a massive patch program with things like this big header patch. And then there will be hexagonal patches that can be sewn into it, and different ones to match the books. We'll have a big Legionnaire 2023 patch, so that you were in it for this year. And we had a couple of patches before this, like one for convention exclusive patch for 2022 and one for my Patreon program, the Explorers Legion. So if you remember that, you get the year one patch for that. So trying to build out this cool kind of punk rock patch plan.
I'm going to have to go out and buy a jean jacket.
Yes.
Black, of course, but
of course.
So I noticed that you do have kind of on the Infinite Black page, there's a subscribe feature. What do you get for subscribing to VAST GRIMM?
So every month I create new content outside of the normal stuff. So I have different tiers, and some you get up to 4 or more NPCs, monsters, or character classes, that sort of thing. Then the next one, it also has a location. And then the next one also has all the VTT elements, maps, tokens.
Oh, okay.
And then the tier after that, I run a game every 2 months where I reach out to the people in that tier to say, hey, are you available this day, this time? And we'll get online and do some play testing and run some games.
Well, that's pretty cool. Huh. And so you're doing for when you're releasing these maps and everything, you're doing all the art for those, or do you have partners doing that?
All the stuff for the Explorers Legion is stuff I do. I get up at 5:30 in the morning and I do that stuff on the side. That's for me, for fun. Some of it may get published someday. The stuff for December was all based off of the Krampus movie. Then it was so that's never going to get published, but it was fun. It's something like a movie that me and my family watch every holiday season. So it was fun to kind of tie that into weird space fantasy stuff.
I'm trying to picture what the Krampus's ship looks like.
Well, you never see his ship, but he has a tribute that when he gets there, it encases the player's ship in a giant sphere, much like a snow globe that's kind of paying homage to a part in the movie. So,
okay, it's definitely fun to borrow from your favorite media.
Yes,
I borrow heavily from Star Wars all the time. So, one thing I think I glossed over a little bit in the details of the game. So we talked about how it's got some similarities and is compatible with MÖRK Borg. But what are some of the analogs that someone coming from MÖRK Borg? What's the version of magic in VAST GRIMM? Is it?
Sure.
If you can go into that.
So instead of the scrolls, we have tributes, which are described as little USB drives or small pieces of technology that when you open them up, they do some weird holographic projection, and each one does different things. We have hacked and encrypted tributes. We have something very similar to how you have to spend a neuromancy point to use it. Then you roll a presence test with a DR12, and if you succeed, it works. If you don't, especially if you do roll poorly, really bad stuff happens and cataclysmic condemnations occur, which is always fun to roll on that table. Some also different things that we have is when I talked about the worms and the infestation, a lot of times any organic creature character that you might run into, there's often a chance that they are infected. it may not have taken over yet, but like some monsters, it's a 1 and 2 on a D6 that they're infected, or a, different range. So if you're in close combat with them, like certain things like a laser sword may do more damage, but you're also more prone to being up close and personal with something where you might become infected. And once you've become infected by a Grimm or by a worm, you have to roll a toughness test. And if you fail, then you roll that every day. And if you fail, you experience a parasitic pain. And there's different tables for each of the 6 different worms. Eventually, one of the pains will kill you or make you one of the Grimm. Or if you succeed, you might get a parasitic pleasure where the worm is actually, it's happy to be in your body that day and it's working with you. And it may leave your body and you may survive having this worm inside you, and it went on about its business.
That's pretty neat. And what kinds of characters? What's your favorite character type?
My favorite character type is probably the emo bot. Because they can't get infected by worms because they're made of metal. So they really like humanity. They really feel feelings, even though they're robots. So they're kind of they're fun. They can have lots of different. I like playing weird robot personality quirks. But we have 8 classes in the core book. 2 of them are a little on the even darker side. Like we have the devout, who are people that want they and the worms to take over and want the end of the universe to come. And then there's the harvesters, who they go out on the battlefields and they find the worms that are still inside of people that were just killed, and they harvest them and try and sell them on like the black market. So those are fun to play, especially for the people that are like, we want all worms destroyed, and you got somebody like, well, I got this kind of pet worm here.
Right. So that's the corporate guy in the Alien game.
Yep.
Bring it back to his corporate masters. Are the factions just in the new upcoming product,
yes.
or do you have? Okay.
Those are just different factions of space raiders. So like different areas of the universe are now kind of like controlled by different pirate groups, essentially. And there's like a grid, hex grid chart laid over the map of the universe, and the GM can roll that to see who controls what. So like it may be different at your table versus my table as to which factions are where, and they could change up over time as well.
Yeah, random tables are great.
Yeah.
I think I've learned a lot today. I wish I had one of my buddies here with me to chat with you also. I'm sure they would have come up with some really, questions that would just blow your mind. But they didn't show up. So it's our loss. It's our listeners have lost because they didn't show up.
Maybe we can do this again sometime in the future when I've got all sorts of new things and somebody else will join us. And
I'd love to have you back. I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I love the graphics that I've seen so far, and the sculptures you did are pretty awesome. So I can definitely feel the creativity. And I'm probably going to back this, and I'm assuming the Kickstarter you'll have in their fulfillment for the original stuff too, right? As a part of the Kickstarter.
So we have a pledge that includes the GM screen and the core rulebook, and then we also have those as add-ons as well. The only thing that we don't have are the dice that were part of the original campaign.
Right.
I wanted to try but anybody that wants VAST GRIMM dice can grab those on the Infinite Black website.
Yeah, they're on your website, and I'll include all those in the show notes. But Brian, are there any closing thoughts you'd like to leave our wonderful and amazing listeners?
If since we talked about like different licenses, if you want to create something, start doing it. The only thing that keeps you from making something a reality is your time. Just carve out a little extra time in the morning and start working on something and put it out there, because people want to play games.
I am not getting up at 5:30 in the morning. There's nothing on this planet that will do that. But kudos to you for doing that, to live your dream. That's amazing. Daddy loves his sleep. But anyway, so Brian, thank you so much for
Thank you, Nathan.
coming on, and I hope to see you again. And hit me up when the Kickstarter goes live. Make sure I want to get those patches, so I look pretty cool in my new jean jacket I have to go out and buy.
Awesome! I can't wait to see it.
All right, thanks, and have a good day, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast. Leave some comments, review us. 1-star reviews are fine, just as long as you're being honest. I don't really care, but it helps other people find us. So I appreciate that. And thank you, Brian. And I'll talk to you again soon.